Welcome back to Let's Talk Careers with Miss V. I'm so excited to bring another incredible guest. Today we are welcoming Candy Ho, who is the Assistant Professor of Integrative Career and Capstone Learning at University of the Fraser Valley. And she's the Board Chair of CERIC. Welcome, Candy. I'm so excited to have you with me today.
Thanks, Maria. Thanks for having me.
There are so many questions I have to ask you, but I definitely want to put out there. Anybody that knows me knows how I cannot stop talking about career development. I'm constantly thinking about it, talking about it. I even believe I might be dreaming about it. And here I have in front of me another professional who, quote, states that she lives and breathes career development. And that's what brought me to you. I came across your profile and thought, I need to meet this human being who I feel I can totally resonate with. Candy, where in your journey did you fall in love with career development, and how did you know that this is what you wanted to do as a career?
Well, I'll first start by saying that there's not only just you and I'd like to think that we have a global community of folks that live and breathe career development. It's a matter of finding them. And for those that are familiar with the idea of career happenstance, I'm sure that I am one of the many stories that entails falling backwards into a career in career development. In one of my undergraduate years, in my third, I believe it was my third year, I decided, you know what, I need to make the best out of my undergraduate journey. And so I started volunteering. And one of the roles that I applied to is a career educator at Simon Fraser University, where I did my undergrad, and they selected me for one of the coveted roles. So I was volunteering with them until the day I graduate, and here I am. Like I fast forward probably, oh gosh, almost 15 years later, and the rest is history.
That is absolutely incredible. Candy, I mean, as a young teenager, I know that you were interested in the social sciences, humanities, and business. But again, you talked about finding your way into it using happenstance. And for anybody that doesn't know this, most likely most people watching this may not have come across happenstance. Give it to us in a little more of a story journey of how did this humanities, social studies, and business student find her way into a degree called career development?
Yeah, well, it's happenstance. I think about that word probably every day, at least a couple of times a day, and I assume that you do too, Maria. Happenstance is about taking advantage of recognizing unexpected chance events and taking advantage of them in thinking about, how can I grow from the experience? What am I learning that's going to help me propel to my next step forward, whatever that may be. And you might have an idea in mind of what you want to do when you grow up, and where you'd like to go. And then, the universe flips it 360 degree, and it's unexpected. So, and a personal journey of happenstance is that teaching runs in my family. So my uncle was a vice principal. My grandfather was a university professor. So I grew up very early on knowing that I would be teaching. And one of my role models was a my English 12th teacher. And I love the way she teaches with a lot of creativity, the way she encouraged students to think outside of their box, in submitting assignments that are more than just essay. And that's my preferred way of learning, being very, very tactile and being able to be creative. And that goes into my teaching as well. And so I pursue my undergraduate thinking, oh, you know what? It's a no-brainer. I'm going to do an English degree and I'm going to teach. I did my very first co-op term at a summer camp and realized, you know what? I do not have the patience that are required to be working with children and high school kids. And so I thought to myself, holy moly, I've already spent first 2 years of my undergraduate degree dedicated to a teachable major. what do I do now? So I was lost for a little bit, and then I went to do my second co-op term, running new student orientation program at my university. And that's when it clicked for me. It wasn't that I lost passion in teaching. It was the age group that needed adjustment, because I certainly was a lot more patient with university students, because by then they're mature enough to understand the things that I'm trying to get them to understand. And I love the training and development. And it's through things like that that really help solidify for me that career development and getting students to take part in co-curricular activities and learning from those experiences is what my calling is. It's what I wake up for every day, for those conversations, helping students understand their skill sets and their talents, and seeing them move it to the next level, whatever path that they might be. So that's a little bit of my, I guess, disorientation, if you will. But I eventually find my way working at a university in student affairs, and then moved around, and then realized, you know what, every single thing that I do, the roles that I've find myself in, career development has always been the center of that, and helping students understand the linkages between their education, their life roles, and the activities that they find themselves in. So again, the rest is history, that I found myself here as an assistant professor teaching career development.
Absolutely. For me, I mean, this is just you're singing the tune to my favorite song, Candy. And I
Yay.
whenever I work with young people, I'm always trying to remind them that a career destination is not one destination. It's really a journey. And without going into theories, because I know that our audience will be young people, parents, teachers, and sometimes as career development professionals, we can go on and on into those theories, but without tapping too much into theory and kind of keeping it at a level that I want students to walk away thinking, that makes sense. I'm going to relook at how I do this. I know that when I work with young students, they're always concerned about getting it right, and it has to be right that first time. So hearing you say, I thought I had it right, my role models kind of gave me the direction, but then when I went into gaining that kind of experience, I realized it didn't feel right. So I went and tried something else, and you tweaked it, and it managed to work. What kind of advice can you give a young person to have the confidence and the courage to say, you know what, that doesn't feel right. Let me see how I can redirect myself.
Oh my gosh, where do I start? How long do we have for this podcast? I would say first, just based on my story, don't be afraid to get it wrong, and you will get it wrong, and that's perfectly okay. Because I think of myself, my 18-year-old self, some years from now, ago, you know. When you think you've got that plan, it's okay. It's great to have a plan, but it's even better to say, this is one of the many possibilities that I'll find myself in. And life expectancy has increased. So we're living longer. And so we're likely going to be working longer. I don't know about you, but it's every couple of years, I get a little tired, and I think, oh, you know what? If I've learned everything I could about a particular role or project that I've been a part of, it's time to move on and do something else. So my second piece of advice is, whatever you choose at your young age, teenagers, it's like unlikely to be something that you stick to. But the exciting part is you're on an ongoing journey to discover and to rediscover yourself. And that I think it's the beauty of career development and lifelong learning, and just being a growing, thriving human being.
I totally resonate. Let's dive in a little bit deeper. So now I'd like to give career counselors, career advisors, teachers, educators, and parents a little kind of thumbs up and say, this part of the podcast is going to really dive into some of the roles that you might be playing if you are helping young people. And if you are a young person watching this, to really understand how the roles that we're about to describe can help support you, or sometimes even, I'm going to say it, hinder that kind of development and that growth that you want to go through. Candy, in your research, you tap into what you described as career influencers. Can you talk to us a little bit about who they are and how they can support, or maybe some of the challenges and some of the benefits that you came across in the research that you've done?
Mhm. I'll start by contextualizing that the research that I did for my doctoral dissertation is situated within higher education, but it's got huge implications for kindergarten to grade 12, and so high school, elementary school, secondary, elementary education. So I'll start with that context with university. I in my own trajectory and in what I've noticed with the students that I serve. Because, for example, faculty members that they see on a weekly or monthly basis, on a regular basis anyways, because through taking courses, working with particular supervisors, as research assistants, for example, you tend to develop a close relationship with them. And so with that closeness also comes trust. And so I define career influencers as people who work in post-secondary, who informally advise, guide, or counsel students on career development. And the focus, the key word here is informal. So as a typical faculty member or academic advisor, you might not have career development background and training, but you can't, you find yourself answering questions or being posed questions about what should I do with my degree in political science, or what do you think I should apply to when I've got, these are all the co-op jobs, or what activity should I find myself in if I want to become a volunteer manager just like you? Those are the questions that I've been asked probably in every single role that I've served in university. And so, I have the career development background, but many of my colleagues don't. So the dissertation was about understanding how do post-secondary professionals who are career influencers, and everybody can be a career influencer, share valuable advice that is contextualized, that is well informed. So there is a role for campus career centers to serve not just students, but these career influencers to better inform their advice to best help students. And so how this translates to kindergarten to grade 12 is that, well, we might not have professors, we might not have academic advisors, but guess what? We have guidance counselors, we've got teachers, we've got parents, we've got supervisors of part-time or summer jobs. There are influencers in every single student's ecosystem and circle that can serve as career influencers. So the implication here is really whenever you are a career influencer and you're imparting advice, make sure that it is well informed by evidence and not based on your own experience. So, if I were to give you an example, I love my parents dearly, but the world that they lived in when they were working professionals, they probably generate their advice based on that context. And if they impart advice to me, my brothers, and my 5-year-old, it's unlikely to be very relevant because it's context laden. So be aware of the context where you're working from, and when in doubt, consult people with background in career development and see what they would guide and advise. And CERIC, which is the national one of the national not-for-profit organization in career development, which I'm so proud to be the chair of, we have a ton of free resources available on helping parents, educators, on having those early career development conversations. So if you'd like, I can include them, send them to you, and you can include them in the show notes.
Please, definitely. And
Um,
I love that you said, well, I loved many things of what you said, but some of the highlights that I'm taking away are influencer, informal, context, and context laden. And I think this is very, very important. What I come across when I'm working with parents and young people, and even in staff meetings when I'm trying to talk with teachers and school leaders about career development and how to embed career development into curriculum or even have informal conversations, I often leave thinking, I wonder if they understand that context is so important. And as I was listening to you, I was thinking, I wonder, would you recommend that a teacher, a parent, any type of influencer really critically reflect on what they're about to tell a young person? Or can they say, well, in my context, when I was growing up, this is what it was like. But for you, it will look different because I think sometimes with young people, they want the answer. They need that kind of sense of security that I'm gonna do this well. And they look to their role models, and often they look to people who are successful in how they define success. And that is very complex anyway, but they look to the people that they think are successful and think, I want to be like that. So I need to copy paste the recipe so that I can almost reassure myself that I will be just like this person. Would you say that it's important for the role models in a young person's life to let the young person understand that, hey, listen, I might have just gotten here by chance. Have you heard of this thing called happenstance? I kind of maybe that's how it happened to me. It won't have to happen necessarily that way to you. And you know what? It's okay. Or do you think there should be more formality around those types of conversations?
Mhm. I would say a little bit of both. I like what you said earlier, to be able to critically think about how you found yourself to be where you are. And part of it is recognizing that times are a lot more complicated now, and also recognizing the privilege, your own privilege that you have coming into whatever role that you're serving right now. I would say that, advice, like I said earlier, needs to be context laden. I'd like to, kind of unpeel the onion and say, I'm giving you this piece of advice based on, and it's grounded on my circumstances, where I was at, for example, like you said, happenstance, being at the right place at the right time. But the advice I'd like to say is only part one. I think in order for the career influencer model to have its full maximized effect, it needs to be, here's the advice that I have based on my context. B, your context would be very different, and here's how I think it might be different. And then, part C, the finale would be, let's figure this out together. We don't have all the pieces of the puzzle. I'm sorry, I don't have a straight answer for you, but the beauty is for us to, maybe do some research, talk to somebody who's got the career development background, or, I'm thinking if a teacher is working with the student who is who's interested in becoming a teacher themselves. And if that particular career influencer slash teacher is close to retirement, maybe they are taking a field trip or even a virtual field trip and say, maybe let's talk to the student teacher who we invited to be here last week in our classroom and find out what their journey has been like, because they recently graduated from teacher education school. So their advice would be a lot more relevant than what I'm about to give you. Right. So it's always that ongoing conversation and building trust. And when done right, the career influencers' influence can be amplified.
And as I hear you say that, I think it's really important that an influencer leaves one's ego at the door when having these conversations. Do you find in your work, in the training that you do, and in the supporting career practitioners that you do, working with young people, that you find that sometimes when we're retelling our story, we don't want it to sound like it was so challenging. We kind of want it to almost come across as, look at me, I've created this incredible career journey. And I think sometimes we have to leave the ego at the door. What do you think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of a catch 22 when you think about it that way, right? Like there's a reason why students are coming to you for advice because they, in their eyes, you are successful. You are someone that they want to be. And with that, it comes with that sense of pride, which feeds the ego. But I would say that, based on my observation and work with post-secondary education, and I'm starting to play a lot more in the K to 12 space, that students are pretty good at picking great career influencers. And one of the trends that I found in my study is career influencers that are willing and able to share stories of vulnerability. So, for example, the time they had failed, it actually brings them closer to students that are seeking that advice, because all of a sudden, I admire you, but now that I'm asking you and hearing all of your stories and failure, you become even more of a human that I admire, because it's that what you said earlier, that heroic journey, that nothing is ever a straight line, that people find themselves where they are through squiggly lines, through, overcoming barriers, or finding them completely in a completely different place than they would ever have anticipated. And I think those make the best stories because they are real, they're authentic, and they are reflective of reality.
Amazing. Now I'm going to wear the hat of a parent. I'm wearing this hat that says, my teenager is about to graduate from secondary school and they need to pick the right degree. Number one, it's expensive. Number two, my friends' children seem to know that they're getting it right. My child has got to get it right. So I think I'll choose it for them, or I will use my influencer role and, heavily persuade them to go down a specific path. You're at the other end in higher education, and in your research, you must have come across students who were there and kind of, why am I doing this? How am I doing this? What are some of your tips for parents who feel anxious about, will my children be okay? I need to have more of an influencer role in this process.
It brings back a lot of conversations during my academic advising days, where conversations with students and looking at their transcripts, and they are doing well in a particular subject, but not so well on the subject that they major in. And when you ask them, like, why did you pick that? Oh, you know what? My parents wanted me to do that. So upholding family, parental expectations versus realizing what they want to do. And I think one of the most important pieces of advice that I find myself frequently imparting is, university higher education, college, if you will, are opportunities where you're sending your students toward further journey of exploration. So, many colleges and universities and post-secondary institutions in general, when you apply to an institution, they ask you to state your intended program, but your intended program can change all the time, and it doesn't have to be the major you end up with. So I often share my own example of how I probably changed my major about 3 times before I decided what I wanted to do. Like, I know I wanted some elements of English, but then I added more minors to complement my degree. And at the end, I strongly feel I'm all the better for it, and I wouldn't change it for the world. And I think what I would recommend them to do is spend that first year exploring. There is no one right path. And we're in a world now where, the idea of lifelong learning is integral to life success. So yes, while going into pursuing post-secondary degree is important, it's going to be one of the many forms of learning you will do as you continue your life journey. So, if you by the end of your 5th year, let's say you're so close, you invested so much time, money, and energy into a program, for example, and you feel like you can't turn back, there's options depending on your resources, the time you have, the circumstances. So with each student, I would advise differently, but I would say, one of the pathways is you can go ahead and complete your degree, or think, and along the way, think about what other options, both formal and informal types of learning, that will help you get to that next step. Or maybe like me, you're taking a pause on your major and exploring some of the minors that will complement what you do, or you're taking a halt and shifting. Either way, if any of these options, probably I would definitely recommend talking with an academic advisor who is trained, and also a career advisor, if they don't have both training, ideally, and figuring out your options. Yeah, I would say that. And then I think my advice to parents would be as supportive as you can. And there's a reason you spent, I have a 5-year-old, and I think, I love him dearly, but I might be slightly offended if he doesn't take my advice later on, especially because I major in career development, but I've got, 13 years down the line before he tells me one way or another. I would say that, give your advice, because that's what you're made to do as a parent. And your interest in your child is you want them to be successful, and you want them to be happy every step of the way. So I find that with parent mentors I have been fortunate to interact with, I find that when they move from taking care of little kids to teenagers to young adults, they kind of change their style to, providing advice, to, asking questions and being curious about what's going on there, what's helping you, what are some of the things that, intrigue you about your university studies right now, as opposed to, the big pet peeve of asking a young child, what do you want to do when you grow up, when they probably know like 10 occupations. Right? So thinking about having expansive, generative questions, as opposed to limiting, closed questions, would be
Very,
another piece of advice.
very, very important to think that way. And I like that you mentioned your son, and that even as a career development guru, we're going to call you, that he still might not take your advice. And this is the thing about young people and where they go for that advice. So I think it's a real privilege when a young person selects you to be their influencer. And I think by empowering an influencer with this is what a reflective conversation looks like, I think will do everyone some good. So career development learning is not just for young people. It's not just for practitioners. I would say that it's for the community in general, because we're all interconnected and we're all supporting young people as they grow into their future. I know that one of your top tips is to create a beam, something you call Board of Extraordinary Advisors and Mentors. Tell us a little more about that.
Yeah. I wouldn't be here talking to you today if I didn't have mentors and advisors that I've turned to during various times in my life. I would say, from the moment I was born, my parents are my mentor, my grandparents were my mentor, my teachers, to my doctoral supervisors and co-supervisor, and my bosses right now. So every step of the way, it's important to think about who has been part of your journey, who's guided you, moved you into positive and interesting directions. And they don't have to serve formal roles. It could be, people you've passed by in your life that just notice something in you, such as a formal director. And I worked in that office for a very short period of time. So my boss's boss's boss, 3 levels removed, have said to me, you know, you're really good at what you're doing in university. Have you thought about a career working in student affairs? And boom, here I am. I didn't have much interaction with that individual, but like it's that one exchange conversation that could change your life. So I always advise people to think about assembling a board, a beam, because you know you shine because of these people, right? I like the connotation. So think about the when reflect on your trajectory right now and think about what might be some upcoming opportunities and challenges you anticipate facing. So for people that are graduating, a pretty realistic one would be, should I go to graduate school or should I find employment or both? What would that look like? And then strategically identify people who have those lived experiences who might be able to give you advice. And then invite them for conversations. And when I say board, you know, you don't have to have them meet together. You can meet with them one-on-one, or, you know, if you'd like to facilitate connections because you realize, oh, you know what, so-and-so have, you know, similar overlapping interests, you might introduce them and have a conversation together. So in that sense, you're also broadening and expanding everybody's network and building community.
Incredible. And then you say recognize that success doesn't happen overnight. How does that come across when you're working with professionals, parents, teachers, and young people in a world where everything seems to be going so fast and the expectations are that doesn't it happen overnight? We're living in a social digital world where, you know, followers and likes and connections are really happening ongoing.
Mhm.
How do you encourage this? Have some patience with consistency. There will be results. Put in that regular effort as you've stated, and get the buy-in and the win-in from the person on the other side of the conversation.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's easy, actually quite easy to make that argument with parents. For example, parents and students, actually with parents, um, after congratulating them for raising a child who is of, you know, university age and getting to higher education, you know, reminding them that it is not an easy feat to raise your child and have them complete a university degree, and then ask them, you know, what are some, you know, tips and advice that you would have on, you know, day in and day out. And the most one of the most recent advice that I really liked is, you know, just remember, you know, the days are long, the years are short. Essentially, they've just generated their own advice that these things take time. They didn't raise a responsible, amazing, mature adult overnight. It is conversations after conversations, setting boundaries, making sure that you're guiding them on the right path, presenting them with opportunities, having tough conversations when you need to, and having encouraging conversations whenever. Right. So when you remind them that these are steps that you took to get there, it's easy for them to buy into that argument that these things take time. And with students, you know, 4+ years degree, collecting, you know, credits, taking courses, generating learning, and personalizing learning from the experiences that you've accumulated. You could very well, you know, do an activity from that asked them, you know, think back to yourself 3 months ago when you started in my classroom. What was it like for you? What were the biggest learning? What did it take for you to generate this learning, and how did you get there? And what are you going to do now? So the what, so what, now what really helps them think about that trajectory of, oh, you know what? I am a different person when I started in your classroom at the beginning of the semester, and I'm going to be a different person as I exit and finish the course. And I teach senior capstone courses. So we do a lot of thinking, big picture thinking, reflection, and generating aha moments in that course.
I love it. Oh, Candy, I can go on forever and ever. There's so much depth to this conversation. We're definitely going to need to tap back into more of your career journey and your career wisdom, but I think we're going to have to bring it to a close for today. Candy, if you could think of just one nugget of, you know what, if you're a practitioner and you are helping young people, this is the nugget that really has been the thing that I go to whenever I'm feeling like, how can I help this young person?
I would say one. Can I do two if
Yeah,
that's okay?
go for it.
I'll make it quick. So the first one follows the first one and the second one. So the first part would be remember the young person that you are and the feelings of uncertainty, anxiety that came along with that, and being young and not knowing, like the big part of it is not knowing what you don't know, and situating where you are at now will help you generate empathy so that you remember what it was like. But then also remember your context, how you grew up, who you were like as a teenager, and the background that you grew up in is very different. So don't forget to ask questions and listen.
I love that. Always about asking and listening to those questions. So, so important. Thank you, Candy, for being with me today and joining us on this conversation and this journey of career development for young people. And I think career development, especially in this times, this very fast-paced world of technology, career development is not limited to the young. I think, as you said, we are living longer, and career development can be for any age group at any age and any stage of one's career. So thank you for being here with us today and sharing some of your knowledge and your insights into career development. And if you are just tuning in, I was speaking with Candy Ho, who is an incredible career development. We're going to toot your horn here, Candy. Dr. Candy Ho is an international award-winning career development educator and scholar whose expertise is recognized globally throughout keynotes and engagements. Candy is an incredible speaker. You've got to read her research on career influencers. If you haven't come across it, just send me a DM and I will ensure that location for you. Thank you, everyone, for watching. I'm going to stop rambling. My name is Miss V, and we were on Let's Talk Careers with Miss V. I will see you all at my next career interview.